Welcome to week 81 of Misha Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
We've watched episode 390, which originally aired Monday, February 10th, 1986. Eden rereads the latest letter that she wrote to Cruz and hides it in the secret door behind a picture. Now, we haven't seen this before, and first we thought it would be a safe, but it's actually just a door that you kind of push on it and it pops open. So I guess it's more hidden than safe. When Kirk comes in, she doesn't put the painting back quite correctly. Kirk tells her that Cece is anxious for them to have a son, and he mentions the trust fund bonanza that the first male grandchild will get. He says that he'll feel like one of the family once he's related by blood. That's pretty much what we talked about yesterday. Kirk gets Eden to agree to stop taking her birth control pills. Once he's out of the room, she takes one anyway. Oh, that wily Eden. Gina calls Kirk to arrange a meeting. Kirk agrees to come to Buzz's. Kirk runs into Cruz there and tells him that he and Eden are going to have a baby. And Kirk says maybe you'd like to come to the christening. I suppose Godfather would be pushing it. Haley goes for a jog on the beach in her peach jogging outfit with a yellow headband that Gina added at the last minute just to top it off. Guess who else is jogging today? It's Ted Capwell. And they run into each other and chat about proper jogging procedure. And they got some location shooting on the beach with location sound, unlike Mason and Mary, who had silent horseback riding with no audio last time. And then they end up at Buzz's, where Ted asks if she's had breakfast. Gina is already at Buzz's, waiting for Kirk, and she sees Ted and Haley together, but doesn't let on that she's seen Ted, and says to lets Haley tell her all about a boy she met on the beach. And Gina says, "Oh, did it seem like there was a spark or anything?" And Haley says, barely. So I think maybe my idea of Gina trying to get Haley to date Ted for whatever reason might be already in Gina's head too.
And it must be said that whether this is strategizing on Gina's part, which it probably is to a certain extent anyway, or whether it's genuine emotion, she is treating Haley much, much more nicely today. A little bit shades of how this character treated Summer, I thought. So I was happy to see that. As I say, with Gina, it's probably partly a bit manipulation, but it was nice to see.
Gina tells Haley with a little makeup she would look half decent. Now, I thought Haley was wearing quite a lot of makeup already when she showed up at the door. As a lot of people in the 80s did.
Yes, and especially if someone's going out for a run, having a big face full of makeup is not necessarily the most comfortable thing when you're running on a beach.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Then she asks Haley if she has a boyfriend. And Haley says that she had one in high school, but she broke up with him before she came to Santa Barbara. So I don't know if we'll have a ex-boyfriend turning up someday.
It's possible, depending on how long Haley stayed.
Atlantic City. Just as she and Ted are about to get married, he'll burst in. I had your baby. Kirk tells Gina they need to meet in less public places than Buzz's. Gina asks Kirk what Cece has in store for Brandon. And Kirk doesn't really know. But he does take the opportunity to point out that things are going well with Eden, and Gina says, "Oh, you got her pregnant already?" Gina says she knows exactly what he's after. It's the windfall of the firstborn grandson.
So this is apparently a well-known thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be said that Eden didn't seem particularly impressed with it when Kirk presented this to her. So
yeah, she says, "What is our prize for being first?" He goes, "Well, kind of." Gina and Kirk are not quite the match made in heaven that we might have thought they would become, because Gina says, "I hope Eden has one girl after another." And Kirk says, "It'll be a boy." Gina says, "Even if it isn't, I'm sure you'll try to pass her off as one."
I thought that was a good line.
Santana tells Rosa that obviously Cece wants her to marry Cruz so that he'll stay away from Eden.
Which was exactly the theory you put forward last time.
Cruz wants to know what Cece said to Santana. She says she does not want to tell him, and then decides she can't tell him because it might cause him to marry her for the wrong reasons. She ends up writing Cruz a letter that says they should spend less time together, that they've been getting too close. So Cruz is not surprisingly shocked by this and tries to track her down to get some more info, but she keeps running away from him.
And I think perhaps her hope is that he will come to her, but in very genuine terms of wanting to be with her, rather than, as we've already discussed, her feeling compelled to.
That's kind of what she said to Rosa, that she wanted it to be, if he wants her, that he'll come back to her, and then she won't bring up the marriage thing. Rosa's actually worried, though, that he'll hear it from a third party that's, Cece's told her she needs to get married. So I guess Santana figures it's better off, not saying anything.
But it does seem to me that it's kind of zero-sum for her. Like, if he doesn't come, to her, then she has lost probably an opportunity of a quick marriage. And then she's got to start back from square one, finding someone to marry her so she can have Brandon.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any other potential people. Well, there's Mason, I guess. Don't think she wants to marry Mason. Kirk replaces Eden's birth control pills, as far as I could tell. Anyway, he seemed to have
monkeying around with them.
Yes, I think he had a separate packet. So I think he's probably put sugar pills in there because he suspects, and rightly so, that she's going to keep taking them. So he clearly doesn't trust her. Then he notices that picture is askew, and moves the picture, finds the secret cache of letters, and reads the love letters that Eden has been writing Cruz. So I think this may cause a bit of a drastic turn in their relationship. I suspect Kirk is not going to tell Eden that he found them. I think he might just, continue with his plan of trying to get her pregnant secretly.
And I think this is going to lead to basically a multifaceted effort on behalf of a lot of people to get Cruz to marry Santana. We've already seen that from Cece. We've already, for different reasons, had Rosa say, you should talk to him about this. Maybe he will marry you and it'll be good. But I think Kirk is going to be all in on trying to get Cruz out of the scene now as well. And maybe he'll even employ Gina in that somehow.
Mason sets up his shingle at a card table at Nick's casino. Shades of when he was setting up in the State Street Bistro, and Julia is deriding him for that. Mason says that thanks to his father's doings, he is not able to work on the mainland. I guess he's safe from Cece's hands out there. Julia tells Augusta that she will not represent her against Lionel. And Mason tells Julia she shouldn't be turning down jobs like this. And then Augusta opts for Mason to defend her and agrees to pay him 10% of the settlement. And throughout this episode, we meet Bobby, who's a waitress at the casino, who interacts with Mason quite a bit. So
I was so delighted to see this scene with Mason and Augusta, because they're such great characters together. Throw in Julia. I'd love to see Mason and Julia start a practice together. I would just love it if these three characters hung out together for a while, because they all have such energy together.
Yeah, it's a nice trio.
Yeah.
I don't want to say pairing. Trairing. That we haven't seen much of in the past. It'd be nice have some time with these characters. Mark McCormick decorates the guest house for Mary's birthday. and takes Mary out for a day of walking on the beach and stopping at the museum to take in the Lockridge exhibit. Mason shows up and leaves a birthday horse for Mary, which manages to get into the guest house after Mason leaves and starts chewing up all of Mark's decorations, and we last see it starting in on the cake. At the casino, Mary and Mark show up, and Mason wishes her a happy birthday there, and she tells him all about the day she's had with Mark, and he says he would have taken her up in a hot air balloon. She says that she gets airsick. And then Rosa phones Mason at the casino saying, your horse has gotten into the guest house. Mason races over there and arrives basically just a second or two ahead of Mary and Mark to see the devastation wrought by the horse on Mark's surprise for Mary.
And I have to say, Mary actually looked kind of amused by the horse more than she was appalled by its behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be a little bit of bad news for Mark down the road in this competition. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know if Mark will freak out. Didn't Janice say he has a bad temper?
Yeah, I feel like he will probably freak out. There might be some red flags that go up, but I don't think we're going to see Mark having a full-on rager or see that really dark side until he has an opportunity to, endanger Mary in some way.
We will see what happens. Oh, that may have been a Friday episode originally. But we will watch the Tuesday episode, number 391, and let you know what happened. Hopefully you're watching along. See you then.
Bye-bye.
I just like us to let bygones be bygones. I mean, we do have to live in the same pueblo. Hey, amigo? Maybe you'd like to come on down to the christening. Actually, I suppose Godfather'd be pushing it, but, well, we'd still like you to be there anyway.
Gina, I am getting in so good with the Capitals right now that pretty soon not even you will be able to hurt me.
Don't tell me you got her pregnant already. I know what you're after. That inheritance that Cece has set up for the first grandson. Well, I hope Eden has a girl. Not only that, I hope she has one girl after another.
It'll be a boy.
And even if it isn't, I'm sure you'll try to pass it off as one.
Augusta, that would be against the law. And anything so nefarious is totally against my principles. Is tonight all right?
Boy, oh boy, do I love danger.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 391 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Tuesday, February 11th, 1986. Well, I didn't bring my notes with me because I wasn't expecting to be down here at the Olympic torch, but they've relit it for the Paralympics, so thought we'd come and watch some of our precious natural gas being burned up. So, one of the first things I recall about this episode was that while Eden was in the shower, Kirk decided to take a look at those letters again. And he started getting very angry with Eden, and throughout the episode he said things like, "She lied to me, she lied, and damn her." So I think we have at least one Capwell girl spouse that might be going off the rails in this episode.
Yeah, I think the indication of that really was that Kirk spent most of the day not being dressed and just sitting in the bedroom reading these letters that Eden had written. So he's really almost not very functional for most of this episode.
As Eden races off to go to the Orient Express, Kirk tries to get her to say "I love you," and she kind of basically doesn't say it, which sends him into more of a spiral. At the hospital, Dylan pretends to be Nick in order to get in to see Kelly, and he doesn't get to see her for very long before Nick shows up, and they start to tussle, and Kelly comes out to break it up, and she ends up passing out in the waiting room, so everyone gets kicked out. And then the next thing we know, Dylan's at the casino, and he is drunk, and he's telling Brick, "Oh, one day I'm going to own 20 of these casinos." So clearly he thinks that's the impediment for Kelly and him getting married, is that he's not rich enough. He seems to be as deluded as Kirk might be getting. So.
Yeah, I feel like we saw a couple of characters potentially go off the rails and into darker storylines this episode, and Dylan was really the other one as well. He's really getting quite unhinged, I would say, and his relationship with Nick has obviously completely deteriorated. I felt like his relationship with Kelly was perhaps deteriorating a bit too. She's obviously not happy to see him. And I think even more telling, you know, Brix has this really unpleasant conversation with him at one point and ends up saying, you know, I don't think he's doing very well. So I think there's a lot of foreboding here about Dylan possibly ending up being a bit of a problem going forward. I mean, he's already a problem, but being perhaps a little bit unhinged or deranged in some way.
Nick shows up at the casino and grabs Dylan by the lapels yet again and says basically, from this point on, you're dead. So he of course has said you're dead to me before, but still ends up coming back to him. But now of course we're wondering, once again, is someone going to kill Dylan? So Dylan tells the bartender, keep Nick here for at least 20 minutes no matter what, and he races back to the mainland, back to the hospital and back into Kelly's room. He barges in, and of course Cece is with her. He goes, I didn't know anyone was here. So it's very interesting, the glare that Cece gives him as he walks out of the room, because he's basically thinking, I'm leaving this to Kelly to deal with, but I can't believe this guy's still sticking around here.
Yeah. And, you know, I think at this point Kelly's not afraid of him, because I really feel if she had been afraid of him, she would have tried harder to make Cece stay. But I do think she's very disturbed by the fact that he keeps bursting in. And I think even though she's maybe at some level, for some mysterious reason, still tempted sexually by Dylan, I think she really wants to try and move forward with Nick at this point.
Dylan says, why didn't you tell Nick? And she said, well, you know, I didn't want to hurt him. And by telling him, you know, you've hurt him.
Yeah.
And Dylan says, we have to tell him because, you know, that's the only way we can be together. And, you know, basically Kelly says, well, I don't love you. So,
yeah.
And Dylan says, but I love you. And I can't remember the exact exchange that they have, but Dylan says something about him being better than Nick, and then Kelly saying, no, you're not.
Yeah.
And then Dylan says, well, you're gonna regret this for the rest of your life. And then he storms out and runs into Nick, who's, you know, also come back to the hospital. He says to Nick, enjoy her while you can.
So that's, well, that's a little bit foreboding, definitely.
I feel like Dylan may be an expendable character.
Hope so.
Let's see, at Nick's place, the casino, Amy showed up there to complain that Brick that she never saw anything of Brick anymore. You know, it's been 2 days since the casino's open, but obviously Brick is working hard launching the casino. So then later in the episode, she shows up with a picnic basket. I think that was it for that.
Well, we do have a really interesting conversation, I thought, with Brick and Amy.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you know, apart from him basically saying that he's starting to feel that Dylan is breaking under the pressure, he also says several times, he says, you know, I just don't know if this casino's going to make it. We're raking in big profits now, but I'm just not sure, because Amy comes in with the idea that maybe she could come and work at the casino too. It would be a bit nicer than waitressing. She'd get to hang out with Brick a little bit more. And he sort of says, no, I don't think that's a good idea. I just don't know what the staying power of this casino is going to be. And, you know, if you stay on at Buzz's, at least you'll still have a job if this goes under. And I thought that was really interesting.
He says he thinks it's kind of weird too, having it be a mix of Capwell and Lockridge. And Amy says, well, you're a mix of Capwell and Lockridge.
Yeah.
Someday that's going to have to be reconciled one way or the other.
Yeah.
Also at the casino, Augusta is a little annoyed at Brick because he's got all of his paperwork out on one of the tables, and I guess that's cutting into her profits. It's not entirely clear what Augusta's role is, but she seems to be running the floor, as far as I can tell. And Brick says, "Oh, well, they're just carpeting my office." So we have not seen Brick's office yet in this oil rig. And then Augusta goes to Mason and says, "Lionel refuses to let me have his artwork appraised."
Yeah.
Now, this reminds me of the fact that I think most of his paintings are fake, right?
I think so.
I think he's trying to spare Augusta by not, giving her the artwork.
I think he's trying to spare Augusta, but I think he's probably trying to spare himself too, because if it comes out that these are all fake artworks, that's going to put a big, dent on his finances, on what he's sort of assessed at. And I think
He's probably got some loans against that collateral.
Exactly. And also it could lead to questions of, why is it fake? When did it get fake? When did it become fake? Because I'm sure it was initially appraised and certified as genuine. So that could maybe bring some unwanted attention onto Lionel's activities as well.
So Augusta suggests breaking in to the Lockridge house, and Mason says, "Oh, that would be unethical, and I would never want to be a party to something like that. Is tonight okay?" And then Augusta says, "I just don't have any experience in this." And Mason, the camera pans over, and guess who's there? It's Pearl. Mason says, "Oh, I think I know someone who might." And we not only get another Mason and Augusta coupling that we've been hoping for, but Pearl gets engaged in this wacky adventure too. So cut to them breaking into the basement of the Lockridge house. Pearl says, "Oh, you stepped on my foot," before they manage to get the light on. And then Pearl says, "I love danger." And we get to see that basement again, which I really love for some reason, that Lockridge basement. Not the bit that we saw when the tunnel was collapsing, but the bit that we saw when Elizabeth Peel was forging art down there. So it looks even more crammed with stuff than before. Mason is shocked by how much there is. He says it must be half the artworks in the world down here. And Augusta says, "Well, there's not any room to display them up there, so we just rotate them." So, and then we find out that Pearl is surprisingly knowledgeable about artwork as they're doing the appraisal, because a couple of times Augusta will say, "I think that's a Picasso," and Pearl says, "Oh, that's a Matisse."
Yeah,
So,
I was surprised. I feel like maybe Pearl was an art history major for a few semesters at some point.
This could be the beginning of revealing the secret of Pearl. And so they were down there a long time. I think they said Minx was out of town or something. I don't think they were worried about Minx being there. But they did try to keep quiet, so. So at least they've got an appraisal of, apparently, real artworks. So we'll see how that moves forward. Lionel might start freaking out once he realizes they've been down there. Rosa and Cece have a conversation about what Cece's doing to Augusta. Going to do Santana. Rosa's really quite upset that Cece's basically trying to force her to marry Cruz. And he says, "Oh, he'd make a great son-in-law for you." And she says, "Well, this is not the way it should be." And she says, "I'm seriously thinking of quitting."
Yeah, which is
This
huge.
is the first time we've seen Rosa not be 100% loyal to Cece, no matter how harmful it was to any of her family members.
Yeah, exactly.
And Cece just does not freak out. He remains calm, as he has of late whenever someone tries to go against him. And he says, "Well, it'll be a shame to lose you, but I think this is for the best."
Yeah.
So he's not backing down an inch there. So now we'll see if Rosa will really quit.
Yeah.
There might be a job for her at the casino.
Yeah, you never know.
So Cece shows up at the Orient Express. Now Kirk has freaked out at one point, thinking that Eden is with Cruz. So he phones the Orient Express and she's not there. So he runs over there doesn't see her. She hasn't been in all day, says the bartender. Cece shows up and fills Kirk in on his idea that Santana should be married before she gets Brandon. I think Kirk clues in. Oh, good. This will
get rid of Cruz.
Get rid of Cruz.
Yay.
So, and then Cece says, "Oh, Santana's meeting me here for lunch. Send her over," as if he was like, an employee suddenly at the Orient Express instead of just an executive in the Capwell company. So Kirk's like planning to look for Eden, but now he's stuck waiting for Santana to show up. And all he does when she shows up is, "Oh, please, Cece's over there waiting for you." And then before Kirk can look any further, Eden shows up, and Kirk's like, "Oh, where were you? I was looking all over for you." And she says, "Oh, I stopped by the office first." So he says, "I really need you to just come home with me right now." So I think this is his way of regaining some control over his marriage by just saying Eden needs to come home with him and not even stay at work. So he talks her into that, but as soon as they get home, she decides to take a shower. He says, "She just had a shower. I can't take 2 showers in one day."
Yeah.
So she's in the shower, and Kirk tries to join her, and she won't have any of it. And then he broods for a little while in the bedroom, and then decides he's going to join her anyway and starts stripping off his clothes.
And that's the sort of ominous note we leave this episode on. I can't blame Eden. I mean, she got all dressed up. She went off. She had her day. She's ready for a nice meal at the Orient Express, and her husband drags her off home, presumably to try and have a child that she doesn't want to have with him. And then tries to, our last scene, him basically forcing his way into her shower, which we assume she's gone to for a little bit of alone time, if nothing
obviously,
else.
Since she already just had one. At the Orient Express, Santana shows up, and she says, "I know exactly what you're doing. You're just hoping that I marry Cruz so he'll stay away from Eden." And Cece says, "Oh, I hadn't thought of anything like that. I just really feel Brandon needs the stability of a couple." So,
she's not buying it, and despite all of her promises to Rosa that she was going to be cool and collect and not let Cece get to her, she actually ends up pretty much letting him get to her. Yeah.
Who have we missed? Was that everyone?
I think we've pretty much covered it.
I think so. I think we covered them in a slightly different order than I had written them down. I wanted to mention that just before we came here, two people from Santa Barbara passed away. Just before we left, Catherine Lee Scott posted on Facebook that Mitchell Ryan had passed away. He, of course, played Burke Devlin #1 on Dark Shadows, and he'll be playing Anthony Tennell in a couple of years on Santa Barbara. And also, I saw on another Facebook group that Tim Considine passed away. He was on My Three Sons. I don't remember if he was one of the sons or an in-law
I feel like
or
he
what.
was one of the sons.
And he, of course, the brother of John Considine, who played Grant Capwell on Santa Barbara, starting, I believe he shows up in 1986, so we might be seeing him in a few months. So those are that's a bit of the sad news for today, March 3rd, when we're recording this. And this episode had some credits, and I can't remember the 3 at the bottom. Orient Express bartender, and 2 others. But the new addition to the cast is Haley, played by, I'm blanking on her name, Stacy Edwards as Haley Benson. Now that's weird, because Summer's last name was Blake, and Gina's maiden name was Blake. So her dad, I guess, must have been Stan Benson, and Gina said that was her brother. So I feel like this may have been a Steve Bassett situation, where Gina's mother was previously married to a guy named Benson and had an older son, Stan, with him.
Yeah.
And that also goes some way to explaining why, by the time Summer and Gina were, quote-unquote, on their own, this Stan Benson was, long out of the picture and probably married in another state and not, able to take care of Gina and Haley, or may even have been out of touch with the family by that point. So yeah, that's an interesting twist to the surname stuff, especially since, as we complained, Gina and Haley never really much had a conversation about, how exactly they were related.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be interesting. Maybe Ted will ask, hey, how come your name's Benson when Gina's is Blake? But
Maybe
this
we'll
may
find out
also
more.
help to keep the fact that Gina and Haley are related from the Capwells for a much longer time, because they have a different surname.
Yeah.
So she might be, engaged to Ted before he finds out that Gina is her aunt. So I think that was about it. If there's anything we missed, we'll just record it at home when I check my notes. And I'll pop in a couple of the quotes that I couldn't quite remember as well. And enjoy the Olympic torch as the Paralympics are going on in China. And we'll be back after we watch episode 390, beep, 390 whatever, of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
One thing we forgot to talk about at the torch, just something that Santana said to CC at the Orient Express. She says that she knows what he's up to, and then she says, "It's a pity you didn't die."
That's pretty hardcore, especially since she was, so positive about him waking up from his coma. Now, some of that was maybe a bit self-serving because she was hoping to talk to him about Brandon, but still, considering she dated the guy for a while,
Yeah.
pretty hard.
She basically tells him she knows what he did. He, of course, denies it. And then the other thing we didn't mention is that it looked like Amy might have a new hairdo. So that is it for the last episode.
It's 1 p.m. Do you know where your wife is? That Eden's a slippery lady, isn't she?
It is Wednesday, February 12th, 1986. And we've watched episode 392 of Santa Barbara. And Sam finds Dylan trying on some new clothes. And Dylan says that he's going to have to impress some people. So it seems clear that he thinks he's just got to, look the part to get in with the Capwells.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly tells Nick she wants to move in with him. Kelly and Nick move Sally's things out of her apartment, as far as we can tell, because all of that stuff, even those wicker chairs, I'm pretty sure were Sally's.
I feel like maybe Kelly just bought the whole lot from her at some point.
I think so. So they end up moving stuff out. Of course, Dylan is there, so they end up glaring at him the whole time, and whenever he tries to say something, Nick says, "Are you here?" They decide to leave the bed and the sofa in case Janice needs them, because she is, after all, also living there.
And they do get a bit of help from Tad, who, Tad is Tad, but I wouldn't say he's really overly buddy-buddy with Dylan either during this move.
As they leave, Dylan says to Kelly, "Have fun playing house." And Dylan also mentions to Kelly that he's moved into the Capwell Hotel. And she said, "Let me guess, the presidential suite?" And of course she guessed right. And she says, "Of course, you're wasting your money when you still owe your brother so much." So yes, it's like Goofus and Gallant, really, isn't it? Dylan and Nick. And then Nick and Dylan manage to talk while Kelly's out loading stuff into the truck, and Nick tells Dylan that Kelly's love can't be bought with expensive things. And Dylan tells Nick, "Every day you're going to get older and older, and I'm going to get newer and newer."
Which isn't really how time works, but whatever.
And to thank Ted for helping the move, he gets the autographed Who album that he has been waiting for all these years. We see the back cover of it. I did a quick Google search on the backs of Who albums and didn't seem to match any of the ones that came up, but who knows. As they start unpacking everything at Nick's place, Kelly says, "Hey, maybe we should move into my place instead."
She suddenly notices that the place they just moved out of was bigger.
Yeah, but really not much, because it's got the living room and a curtain to the bedroom. And Nick, of course, has an entire room that's a dark room. Where are they going to build that in Sally's apartment? So that's kind of a dumb suggestion. Also, the fact that they just moved all their stuff. Their move wasn't quite as daunting as ours, but still. And then Sam arrives. He needs to talk to Nick, and he says, "Have you noticed a kind of change in Dylan?" So,
I think he actually talks to Kelly, does he not?
Maybe. I have written down that it was Nick, but he's definitely worried about Dylan. So we sensed a change, too, a couple days ago when he suddenly started sounding like a psycho, which a lot of Kelly's suitors seem to have done so far, so he'd just be added to the psycho gazebo at some point. It's not really a surprise.
No.
Kirk awakens. Speaking of up-and-coming psychos, Kirk awakens as he hears the door close, and he finds a note from Eden saying she's going to Los Angeles. He runs out of the house just as she pulls away. He spends basically the whole day trying to track down Eden in L.A., and he's convinced that she's actually secretly meeting Cruz. Julia meets Cruz at the Orient Express to discuss Angel, who is apparently going to a plea bargain and turn someone else in order to get a reduced sentence, perhaps. She indicates Angel's a bit worried, about testifying. Later, Kirk walks in and sees Cruz sitting alone at his table, and Julia's cup on her side of the table has lipstick on it, and he just assumes that Cruz has been meeting with Eden. Back at home, Kirk finds a new letter to Cruz from Eden. That's all about how much she was dreaming about him that morning. And then she discovers that she canceled her meeting in L.A. So he's been running all over town half the day already. He goes to Gina to try and get her help, and Gina says, "Eden's a slippery lady, isn't she?" Kirk gets Gina to follow Cruz in exchange for lunch. Gina does follow him to the police station, but then gives up and tells Kirk that, that's as far as she's going, so he has to take over the following. Julia, by now, is on the phone with Cruz in the car phone and asks him to come up to the prison to talk to Angel. Kirk thinks that he's actually off to go meet Eden somewhere and follows him. But Cruz spots him and gives him the slip. At the end of the show, Kirk is pulled over thinking, darn, where has that Cruz gotten to? And suddenly, there's a gun in his ribs, and it's Cruz.
And we have a really dramatic time shift, actually, at this point, because, for most of the episode, I felt like it was the morning or early afternoon. Gina was having her lunch, and, we have this sort of early morning moving. And then all of a sudden it's night, and we see Cruz driving up to the prison in the dark. So I found that a little bit jolting, and I guess that just kind of shows how basically Kirk has spent the entire day looking for Eden. And this, I feel, is a pattern we're really falling into with this relationship, where it seems like every week or two we have an episode without Eden, where no one knows where she is, and everyone is searching for her, especially Kirk.
Yeah, Marcia Walker is actually not in this episode. A police officer shows up at Gina's door first thing in the morning with Haley, because Gina had sent her to the Capwell orchard to pick apples. And she was arrested for doing that. And he seems only partly convinced that she is Mrs. Capwell after Gina shows him her ID. Haley's very upset that Gina put her in that position, saying nothing like this has ever happened to me. Gina says, I'll never let anything happen to you again. You're the only family I have. So now we have definitive proof that their parents are dead, or Gina's parents are dead. There's no other older siblings that are going to show up out of the woodwork. It's just Haley and Gina. The only person I have left in the whole world, says Gina. After Kirk buys her the lunch, Gina orders oysters Rockefeller, veal with truffles, and the best Cabernet. She manages to get Ted to sit with her for a while, and it's actually to just try and find a little hole in his armor for Haley, I think, because she asks about Lakin, and he tells her things aren't really going anywhere with her, and so Gina says that you'll meet someone new. Now that breadcrumb has been placed, she finds out from Ted that Rose is still interviewing for the maid that quit the day that Gina left. She made it sound like the maid quit because Gina left. She sends Haley over to the Capwell mansion to get an application form, and Haley overhears Kirk on the phone with Gina during one of their conversations. So she kind of keeps it to herself, but she sees that clearly there's something happening between Kirk and Gina. Back at the motel, Gina trains Haley on how to become the perfect maid for the Capwells. And she's got her, serving her and telling her which side to serve from, etc. And suddenly Rosa phones to tell her to come in for an interview.
And I really actually enjoyed this scene between Haley and Gina, where she's teaching her all these practical skills about, what side to serve from and what plates to put on first, and how to take the plates away and how to fold sheets. And, she's actually teaching her some very practical skills.
But the telling thing is when Haley says, why do we do it this way? She goes, don't ask why, just memorize the procedures. So it makes me think that the first time Gina, had dinner at Stockman's, that, she just had to memorize all these things so that she would fit in. And she'd never even bothered going any further than that. Gina tells Haley that she must keep their relationship a secret from the Capwells, at least for now, which Haley is not, too comfortable with lying to Ted and Rosa and Kirk on the first day. But this gives us some insight, I think, into Haley's character. That probably she's a little bit like Summer, and that she's a good Blake. Gina, so far, the only bad one we've met. So,
and Gina, I would say, was not actually bad until Summer's murder. I feel like that was one of the things that kind of flipped her character.
Yeah,
and the fact that Cece wasn't very nice to her.
Yeah, finding out that Brandon was really Santana's, all that stuff, but Cece really had been pulling strings. So yeah, we can blame Cece for all that. Sophia spots Augusta at the Orient Express, and Augusta tells Sophia that she hates her. Sophia responds that she's always envied Augusta. So this is kind of a twist, because you're expecting some sort of dynasty-like cat fight. And Sophia tries to say, quite the opposite. And Augusta says, your acting now is better than anything you ever did on screen. Lionel arrives in time and tells Augusta that he found her high-heeled footprints in the sawdust in the basement, and that he knows she was down there. And she admits that after some mild coaxing, and he says he could have her arrested, and she says, fake, phony, fraud, and Lionel is really concerned that she realized all the paintings were forgeries. But she says, you would never have me arrested. So it's just a little tease for us.
A little teaser.
For the audience, really. So Lionel is now safe in the assumption that Augusta does not know they were fakes. My question is, with Pearl being so seemingly knowledgeable, I wonder if Pearl realized they were fakes.
Yeah, and I feel like if they're really that famous, now, of course, this is before the internet, that kind of thing. You couldn't just do a Google search to see if one happened to also be hanging in a museum, but still, I think it would be possible to do a bit of research on these.
I mean, I think in other fictions, when they sell a painting that's a forgery, usually they sell the real one to some Russian oligarch somewhere
Yeah,
who
yeah.
doesn't want anyone to know that he has it anyway, and so they double sell it, you know.
Now, of course, this is actually before we had Russian oligarchs, because the Soviet Union was still in place. But the point remains, it would probably have gone to a very private collector.
Sometimes you could forge 6 Mona Lisas all at once and sell them to different collectors, and none of them would know that you were an alien. She says that he wouldn't have her arrested. He says he loves her, and she runs out. She's done that quite a few times lately.
Yeah.
Maybe they just don't know how to end a scene, really, between Augusta and Lionel. But presumably we will see Mason do some fancy stuff at some point during the lawsuit. Now I wonder if Pearl would tell Mason if he knew they were fakes, or if Pearl might try to get some money out of Mason, saying, I know a secret that you will want to know before you go for these paintings. And, maybe he'll tell Mason they're a fraud. And Mason will have something over Lionel then.
Yeah, we'll have to just see how it plays out. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily even be surprised if Lionel is still very concerned about Augusta not getting gypped, if he admits it under oath or something like that as well. But we'll just have to see how it plays.
I really am glad the fake paintings have come back to light.
I am too, because so much
seemed like a dropped
gets fallen by
storyline
the
from that era.
wayside, yeah.
You know, like the Amanda Lockridge Emerald, and that we never really got.
And Kirk's winery, will we ever see it again?
Winery, where he didn't bother
I feel like
staying.
we
Didn't bother
might see
putting
it
Gina out
again
there.
if he holds Eden hostage there or something somewhere down the road. I feel like that's the only time we're going to see it again.
Good idea. Yep. Oh, I was going to make a little chart for Kirk. We'll have to.
But he
do
is
that
still
later.
wearing that very feminine-looking bathrobe, so he is still consistent on that.
Yep. And that is it for that episode. We'll be back after we watch the Thursday episode, episode 393, and I guess we have Valentine's Day coming up on Friday. Will we see a reference to it? We will see. See you then.
Bye-bye.
Take my husband, please. Oh, God, how I hate you. And God, how I've envied you. I wish I could put you in a lie detector. Because if you're acting now, it's better than everything you ever did on screen.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 393 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Thursday, February 13th, 1986. Cruz is surprised to find that Kirk is the one that's been following him. And he yanks him out of his car and searches him and finds in Kirk's pocket the stack of letters from Eden in a little plastic bag, I believe. But Kirk says, oh yes, those are love letters from my wife. And Cruz throws them back at him without ever seeing them. And tells Kirk to stop following him. Kirk puts the letters back in the safe, just as Cece bellows for him, because he has been so focused on finding Eden that he's missed out on the final couple of days of some negotiations. And Kirk has said, oh, everything was going great. And he says, this is when you need to be at the most attentive. This is when things can all fall apart. And Cece offers him a couple of days off if he needs them. Now, I think that's a trap. Kirk does too, because he says, no, I'm on track now, Cece.
I think this could potentially, as Kirk unravels, be a bit of his Achilles heel with CC, because I think CC really wants to see those business results as much as anything. And he never hated Mason because of Mason's incompetence. It's a complete personality clash between Mason and CC. The fact that he still calls on Mason shows that he does retain a bit of respect for him in that regard. regard, I don't know how much respect he will retain for Kirk if he is not delivering at work, and especially if he is then not delivering as a husband to Eden.
Rosa interviews Haley and shows her around the mansion. Gina had rejected the two dresses Haley had gotten for $20, and dresses her up a little better in some very pastel 80s clothing for her interview. Haley mentions that she has no family in Santa Barbara when Rosa asks her about her family. And at one point, as Rosa is showing Haley around the mansion, Rosa gets distracted, I think, by Cece, and Haley makes Eden's bed in that short time, and that really seems to impress Rosa. And she tells her she has the job as long as Cece approves. Haley takes the opportunity to make a quick call to Gina to give her the good news, and Gina says, "No, you must, under no circumstances, meet Cece until I've briefed you on him, so make an excuse." We never hear what Haley's excuse is, but she ends up back at the motel, getting coached a little bit, and then next thing we know, she's back in front of Cece, so apparently Rosa didn't have a trouble with whatever excuse she gave.
I also had the feeling that CC was actually very busy with his business requirements during this episode, especially with Kirk dropping the ball. So I think he was kind of bustling around trying to get business done anyway.
With a few other things that he had his hands in, as we'll find out. Later, Haley meets CC, and as usual, he's very hard to read during their conversation. He's very... sometimes he seems to be smirking, but you don't know if he's smirking because he's about to throw someone into a volcano or because he's amused by them. And Gina had warned Haley not to crack any jokes at all because Cece doesn't like it. But she can't help it because when Cece says that she must be silent at all times, Haley says, "Is it okay if I yell fire if the place burns down?" And Cece said, "Well, we'll try not to play with matches."
But he actually seemed more amused by that than
he
irritated.
did, but still.
Luckily.
Jed Allen's doing a really good job making CC hard to read, I think.
Yes, he did actually, in this interview with Haley, remind me of some of those rock stars or, very snooty actors that you read about in magazines sometimes who get mad if hotel staff look at them. And he had a bit of that vibe to him. You get the feeling that he is, in fact, quite high maintenance.
Mason tells Cece that he's meeting with Augusta, and Cece congratulates him on his fast work. But Mason reiterates that once again, his dealings with Augusta have nothing to do with the little task that Cece tried to set him.
And I hope that's true, actually, because I like Mason being a bit more independent.
Cece says it doesn't matter as long as they're both working against Lionel, and he expects Lionel to become penniless within 6 months. Now, actually, I'm thinking this is quite possible, because Lionel really has, mismanaged the funds for years, and he's swapped out their real paintings for fake ones just to subsidize his trips and things. So it's not like that money is really invested elsewhere. It's probably, gone on, vacations, basically.
And they don't have Brick to shore things up for them at the moment. So.
Yeah, or Minx might cut off Lionel from the family to keep from losing the family house and a few things that she might hold separately. So it's not entirely impossible to imagine that if Lionel plays this wrong, he could end up penniless.
Yeah.
Mason tells Augusta that he has an appraiser ready to come to the house tonight. Then Augusta is worried about running into Lionel. She says that, when she sees him, she remembers, why she was in love with him. Mason says if she's that wobbly around Lionel, maybe that they should be looking at a reconciliation and not a divorce. Augusta tells Mason that the last art appraisal was in 1977 or 78, which sounds like so long ago. And Augusta thinks just adding 50% to that valuation is sufficient. But Mason says it doesn't seem to be high enough. And Augusta suggests that maybe his law degree doesn't give him sufficient skills to do art appraisal. But Mason says, I don't know anything about art appraisal, but I know about inflation. And inflation was getting pretty high in the late 70s. I remember my parents' mortgage was like over 20% around that time. Lionel ends up agreeing that 50% may be low. He offers to add some cash to the total, but he wants to give the whole amount in cash and not any of the art to Augusta. But she insists she doesn't want the cash, she wants the art. And he says, what are you going to do with this art? She basically says, sell it to the lowest bidder. So she just wants Lionel not to have it, which, you know, is amusing since it's all fake. He warns her that there's no way he's just going to get any of those paintings, that he'll hire a legal team. Then we see Lionel on the phone with Elizabeth Peel, who we didn't think we'd ever see again. Well, we didn't see her, but we heard her on the phone, and she says that she'll send over an appraiser that he can trust. So some other scam artist that she knows of will pretend to be you know, a normal art appraiser, but might, you know, first of all, not give away the game that they're fake, but maybe also give a good valuation that's believable to Mason.
So apparently she's out of the Lockridge barn.
Yeah.
And I guess is back in London because he seemed to know where to reach her.
Now, I didn't think it sounded very much like Elizabeth Peel. And Lauren Chase, of course, has shown, I think you said she's from Boston. I found some of her appearances on the A-Team and Matt Houston just to listen to her voice to confirm that maybe, you know, she could have been born in Boston but raised in England and have an English accent. And she definitely doesn't have an accent in those. Although the one Matt Houston, she seems to swallow some R's at the end of a word.
I've held up my end of the deal that you came to me with, Colonel. I've delivered the A-Team to you.
Mr. Houston, my name is Sandra Osborne. Maybe I should go to the police, but I really need your help. Because the others didn't try and kill themselves, Joe. I think Will really cared for me.
Isn't it a little unusual for a chauffeur to be reading a financial paper?
Amy! I didn't recognize you at first. My goodness, really coming along, aren't we? I heard about your brother. I want to tell you I'm very sorry. It was an awful tragedy.
Look, I'll have to get back to you on that, darling. I'll find someone as soon as I can. Don't worry. It'll be someone we can trust. Lionel, your collection is of special importance to me, you know. After all, I did paint every painting myself. Darling, I'll get right to work on finding someone.
But I'm just wondering if Lauren Chase kind of just forgot what she did for Elizabeth Peel, and since it was a voiceover thing, she might have slightly overacted for that reason, just being in front of a microphone. And it may have been Lauren Chase doing the voice. It's just that I can't confirm that, but IMDb says that she was playing Elizabeth Peel in this. So who knows where that data came from. But let's assume it was Lauren Chase in her final appearance as Elizabeth Peel. And now this new appraiser will be taking over the role that she could have had.
And I think it's worth remembering that at this point in the 80s, maybe some people would have VCRs, but not necessarily everyone. And she may not have actually had access to her previous performance to use as reference. Mm-hmm. There was no internet then. You couldn't just Google things and find them on YouTube or something like that. So she probably was playing it from memory. Mm-hmm. And if she had had other roles since then, you could see where this one might not have been top of mind for her.
Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, the fact is that I thought she actually was English means she did a good job the first time around. Mm-hmm. But this time around, it sounded fake. It sounded like someone doing a fake English accent. So, I'm wondering if this new appraiser will be some wacky character in the Frank Armstead vein, or if we're just going to get a little one-off like James Hong, and it won't be anything fun. But, I mean, Lionel, Mason, and Augusta
I
are
know,
all
I
involved
was
in this.
just
It's got to
thinking
be
this. And
a
Pearl,
wacky
it's got to
thing.
be fun.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a fun character, it will be fun, just with that combination.
Mm-hmm. Especially if Pearl throws in some wisdom unexpectedly.
Yeah.
That messes up Lionel and Elizabeth's plan. Mason runs into Haley when he visits Cece. And then he also runs into Mary and asks her to dinner at the Orient Express, and she says, sure. So later on at the restaurant, he orders an expensive bottle of wine that he says he's been savoring for a special night. And then Mary arrives. So I don't know how special this night is supposed to be for Mason. It's not like he's completed the Lockridge divorce deal, and it's just a date with Mary. So
I think it's just the very act of persuading Mary to come and meet with him, and I think maybe savoring a little bit, managing to snatch her away from Mark, even for one evening, is probably worth celebrating for Mason.
Mm-hmm. Cruz gets to the prison, and Angel has been beat up by some people who are working for some people that he's supposed to be testifying against. And he rejects Cruz's witness protection idea because he said, "No, I have family in Santa Barbara. I don't want a different name," and move somewhere else. So basically, Cruz says that he could protect him, until the trial, I guess, personally. So he agrees to that, and they move him out of the prison somehow. I don't know how he got custody of Angel, but they move him to a motel room under the name Gonzalez. But a crooked guard tips off the bad guys. Now, there's no credits in this episode, so we're unlikely to see this character. But I think it's Robert Factor is the actor that we see. He kind of looks... There's the photo.
He does.
But then later on, the guard teams up with another guy who kind of looks similar. So I'm not quite sure who was who of the two thugs that we saw. Rosa is visibly annoyed when Cruz calls to leave a message for Eden. And then Pearl arrives later looking for Rosa Android and leaves a note with a number for Eden to call at 7 p.m. Cece witnesses this exchange and crumples up the note and throws it out. He does not want Cruz in contact with Eden. Rosa, though, uncrumples it and puts it onto the phone, no matter how, annoyed she is that Cruz is not pursuing Santana properly, and in her mind is still trying to contact Eden, not realizing that it may be, case-related. Mm-hmm. But she ends up giving Eden the message verbally. Now, Eden's not actually in this episode.
No.
But she is in and out of the house in between scenes, because Rosa says later she gave her the message. But the physical paper is still there. And Kirk sees it. And Kirk calls the number, and it's answered by the clerk at the White Cliff Motel, which, raises suspicions in Kirk. And the clerk tells him, Mr. and Mrs. Gonzalez haven't checked in yet. Now, I think Julia's probably going to be playing Mrs. Gonzalez in this, but Kirk, of course, jumps to the wrong conclusion. Cruz, Angel, and Pearl are securing the room against potential attack. So they, I guess they are worried that they could be followed or something, but no one has followed Cruz or Angel from the prison. Pearl mentions that Eden and Harvard don't seem to be happy. Cruz says that Eden might have just taken a jet and gone off anywhere in the world, because that's just the kind of girl she is.
And he likes it. So this is a contrast between Cruz and Kirk. Kirk is being driven insane by the fact that Eden occasionally slips out of sight. And Cruz actually finds it quite attractive that Eden goes off on her own sometimes.
So Kirk, because the motel clerk said they hadn't checked in yet, decides that since it's on the way, he'll stop at the beach house first, just to see if they're there. Which may be a mistake, because the guard and his fat friend have been staking out the beach house in hopes of getting, perhaps thinking maybe Angel is being taken to Cruz's place. and they see Kirk looking in the windows, and they decide to follow Kirk instead. And of course, after not finding anything at the beach house, Kirk heads for the motel. And I am wondering if somehow Kirk is going to end up bursting into that room and get shot by Cruz accidentally.
And then Eden will be all over Kirk in the hospital. And that'll be a whole sort of thing. But of course, Cruz will have to be there too. So.
And Cece will maybe take out some ire against Cruz for messing up his daughter's marriage. Not perhaps, for the right reasons that he thinks.
Now, I did have a question for you about this whole little storyline. The last thing I remember with Angel, and I have to admit I wasn't perhaps paying really close attention to the whole Gangs of Santa Barbara storyline we had, but he was busy holed up in the clinic after kind of attacking the clinic with a group of thugs. So I didn't quite understand for the last couple episodes. We've had him suddenly being this star witness and someone who needs protecting and, someone who is now generally flipped to being a sympathetic character. And I'm wondering if a lot of stuff happened off screen that we weren't aware of, or if they've kind of shifted gears a bit. But
yeah, definitely none of that stuff happened on screen. He was arrested, and the next thing we heard Julia saying that he's willing to cut a deal, with whoever to turn in higher-ups. Now, kind of thought he was the leader of the gang, so it's interesting to see what this is. It hasn't been fleshed out, really, and I don't know if we will see it, assuming Angel survives the night. We may see him in the courtroom at some point testifying against someone. Give Julia a chance to do some lawyering. But, I don't really... definitely nothing's been said on screen yet as to exactly what's going on there. But they seem to have maybe decided they want Angel around a bit more and have kind of pivoted his character slightly.
That's what it does seem to me as well, because I always thought the storyline in the clinic was just very much this group of thugs who were really bullying people. And I didn't get a sense of it being related to any sort of higher criminal activity. But maybe it was. Maybe they were drug dealers or something, and that's the kind of thing we're actually talking about. But we'll probably never know, because that's not really the focus of this story.
And I just saw Bernard White's picture a couple days ago. It's something. It might have even been in the TV week. The guy who plays Angel for some show. He's on Big Sky. Looks like he's on Big Sky this year. So
very good for him.
Yeah, I think that's why I saw his picture. I think it was the TV week that I subscribed to on paper. Comes in the mail. And that was it for this episode. Very restricted storylines this week to a few characters, but a lot of stuff this episode. A lot of stuff happened, and Haley got her job, so my prediction sort of half came true. Now there'll be a little fun thing when she realizes the Ted she met is the Ted Capwell that was mentioned to her. Gina, of course, never let on that she knew that was going to happen, so we'll see that happening. We'll see if Kirk gets shot. I was going to put up a little chart of Kirk. I may have to get that for the next episode if something happens. A little chart of Kirk's various injuries to date, in case something more happens to him.
We've set up some nice fireworks for when Eden comes back.
Yeah. I think, something's got to happen to Kirk in that, because it just seems like, just the way the writing's going, something's going to happen. So, you don't stumble into a police shootout without something happening to you. But, or he may just be arrested for messing up the shootout, and that'll be bad enough, Not shootout, we're not hoping for shootout. We're hoping everything is calm and Angel's safe. So that's it for the Thursday episode. And we'll be back after we watch episode 394, the Friday, February 14th episode, which probably won't be Valentine's Day yet, but it'll be interesting. Haley and Ted meeting on Valentine's Day? That might be something.
I'm sure we'll also have a lot of Hartley Brothers action around Valentine's Day. And, of course, Kirk and Eden and Cruz and Santana.
Dueling chocolates for Kelly. We'll see if Dylan goes off the rails when we return. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 394 of Santa Barbara, originally aired Friday, February 14th, 1986. And as expected, there were no Valentine's Day references, because this probably was supposed to originally air on the 13th.
However, I did think of Mason's dinner with Mary as perhaps being a nod to Valentine's Day.
That's possible. Mark is annoyed that Janice hasn't filed the divorce papers yet. He tells her she should have swung by Mexico while she was out of town. He tells her to get right on it so he can marry Mary, and gives her some money to go to Mexico. Janice throws the money back at him and says she hopes Mary turns him down. Mary tells Mason that she's just meeting him to discuss her feeling that Cece inwardly loves Mason, while outwardly saying different. Mason is not really sure he buys that. Mary says, "Oh, he's just like you." Mark shows up and is annoyed that Mary and Mason appear to be on a date. Mary insists it's just a meeting, they're not even having dinner. After Mark leaves, Mason convinces her to dance, and then stay for dinner. She says, well, okay, anything to get this over with. Hours later, they finally return home, and as Mary comes in her house, Mark is waiting for her in the dark. It wasn't creepy. Mark is annoyed, but Mary says that he can trust her. On his way out the door, Mark mentions that she's going to marry him someday. That seemed to stun Mary. Although, you'd think that's obviously what he's been getting at all these weeks.
But Mark has been giving creepy vibes off this entire episode. He's not nice at all to Janice. He basically tries to yank Mary away from her dinner with Mason, and now he's waiting for Mary in the dark and telling her that she is his, basically.
We've got a whirlpool of Dylan, Kirk, and Mark just swirling around all of the ladies on the show.
That. We've got a triangle of Mason, Mary, and Mark, in which one person is obviously deranged or becoming deranged. We've got a triangle of Dylan, Nick, and Kelly, in which one party is definitely becoming deranged. And we have a quadrangle of Cruz, Santana, Eden, and Kirk, with Kirk very definitely becoming deranged. So we've got 3 very deranged suitors in this show right now.
Who will snap first? Will one of them snap during the February sweeps? We're halfway through.
Maybe they'll all snap at the same time.
We'll have a clean sweep and a whole new cast of loonies by May. Ted gives Mason a pep talk about Mary. It's nice to see these brotherly chats that are so rare, because everyone's so busy with their plots. But I like to see these little scenes.
Not that you actually have these sorts of chats with your own brother.
Ted is working on his college paper in the atrium at the big wicker table. Rosa tells Haley that's because he needs to spread out his stuff, and it's the only place big enough. She also says not to disturb him. So Haley and Rosa manage to go through the atrium without Ted or Haley actually seeing each other's face at any point. Haley apparently gets put into the study to change into her new maid's outfit, and as she's half undressed, Ted bursts in because he's looking for a book, and after some awkward chat, they realize that they know each other. And Haley finally gets her maid outfit on. One day to Valentine's Day.
One day to Valentine's Day, yeah. And I think this little encounter definitely is getting Ted and Haley closer and closer together.
I was trying to think, are there any other potential suitors for Haley? And I thought, what if, if they're pivoting Angel, he might be hanging around. I don't know who else he could be for.
Yeah, and I mean, Mason always seems to be friendly with the help. Not that I think they're really setting him up for that, but,
He did try to he did have that dance with Miss Parks when Ted was hanging out with her a lot.
Yeah.
He might not be able to help himself. Kirk shows the clerk at the White Cliff Hotel a photo of Cruz that he has. A big 8.5 by 11, or 8 by 12, I guess, is what photos are. Or 8 by 10. Anyway, he says, the clerk says, Mr. Gonzalez has checked in. And Kirk says, what about Mrs. Gonzalez? He says, well, I didn't see her. Sometimes I don't see people. You know what I mean? In the background, one of the bad guys, who might be that guard from last time, or the other one, is, looking at stuff in the back as if he was just another motel guest. And he overhears the clerk telling Kirk which room Cruz is in. The hotel I, lived at for a while. Didn't really give people's room numbers out, but this must be more of a low quality motel chain. Kirk plans to confront Cruz, but ends up changing his mind. He crumples the photo and throws it on the ground. Back at home, he thinks Eden is in the shower, but it's just Haley cleaning the bathroom. And he gets very upset and tells her never to enter his room without permission. He tells her, Eden returns home, but Kirk and Eden manage not to run into each other at this point. Eden gets the message from Rosa that Mr. Gonzalez said to call. And Rosa goes, I know it's Cruz. And Eden says she'll call him from the Orient Express and promptly leaves again. I'm not quite sure why Cruz is calling Eden while he's on this, stakeout or undercover hotel thing.
All I can think is that he's doing it, at least at some level, to try and talk to her about his suspicions that she did not actually try to kill CC, because remember that conversation was cut off.
It seems like, though, he shouldn't be giving out the fake names and everything.
Yeah, well...
When, it's only a day, really. He could have just waited a day to call her.
Cruz's police practices are a bit wanting, as we've also talked about in the past.
And that may be why Angel is worried that he's about to get killed. He's not 100%, I don't think, on board with Cruz's skill to protect him, and Pearl either. Cruz searches outside when they hear something. Of course, that might have been Kirk. All he finds is the crumpled photo, which he shows to Pearl. So I think that may come back to haunt Kirk in some way.
Yeah.
Cruz decides that things don't feel right, and as he's on the phone making arrangements to move Angel, the bad guy shoots at them through the window, and we see everyone go down on the floor. After the commercial break, the press are all gathered in the room, and there are 2 paramedics and a gurney with a body bag on it. And Kirk says that the bullet struck Angel and killed him instantly. After the press have left, we find out that Angel is alive. And Cruz goes to the morgue, where we find out that Pearl is also alive, even though he was playing the body. And Cruz says he'll have to play dead for another day, at least until after Angel testifies tomorrow. And as Cruz is pushing him into one of the drawers, Pearl says that tomorrow he'll give Cruz what he wants, Eden Capwell. So I didn't quite catch how Pearl thought he was going to do that, but Pearl apparently had a plan that he was muttering about the whole time that Cruz was having a different conversation with him. So I guess Pearl has some plan.
Yeah, that remains to be seen, and I guess he'll have lots of time to work out the details of that while he's in the drawer in the coroner's office.
Yeah, maybe he's just planning to arrange something so they'll have a few minutes together and not anything beyond that. Kirk tells Haley, right, he says when he sees her, to tell Eden that as soon as she comes home, she's immediately supposed to meet him in the study. In the study, Kirk opens up Cece's gun case and looks at the rifles a bit and ends up choosing a handgun. When Eden arrives, Haley says, Mr. Cranston wants to see you. And Eden starts going upstairs. And she says, he made it sound like he wanted to see you immediately. And Eden was kind of, okay. So she heads to the heads to the study where Kirk is sitting behind the same desk that the killer sat behind when Channing was shot. And Kirk has the gun in the drawer, and as Eden comes in, he quickly slams the drawer and demands to know where Eden's been all day. And she says, "Oh, I just went out to Catalina to be alone." Kirk says, "Do you have anyone who can back up your story?" So he's really in full interrogation mode there.
And I was thinking, Catalina would actually be quite a distance.
She probably flew, though.
She probably flew, but remember she's flying from Santa Barbara as well, not
Oh,
Los
that's
Angeles.
right.
So, it is a ways. It's not something. If you were doing it as a day trip, it would be a very long day to do that. Even
I do
flying.
remember when the last time Kirk was looking for Eden, Ted said she usually takes the helicopter when she goes to LA, so that wouldn't be too much further to Catalina. Eden says he wouldn't worry so much if he just trusted her more. Now, of course, she doesn't know that he's read all her letters to Cruz. So.
No.
She says, "Come on, let's go to bed." Kirk follows, but slips the gun into his pocket. So I think our February sweeps definitely, I think, will include something exciting to do with Kirk.
Yes.
Whether Mark or Dylan manages to blow anything up during the sweeps remains to be seen.
We might see Kelly, Eden, and Mary all being held hostage at
in
the
the
same
winery.
time. Yeah, in the winery.
One in the winery, one in the casino, one in a monastery.
There
Or in
was
the guest
actually quite a nice little scene, just a very small scene between Haley and Ted when, after Kirk yells at Haley, she's obviously very upset, and she goes down and Ted notices she's really upset, and she says, "No, I have to go and talk to Rosa." So I'm hoping she is reporting Kirk's behavior to Rosa, because what I'm hoping is that right now, we've seen how crazy Kirk is, just in scenes by himself.
But no one else knows.
But no one else has really seen that side to him. Cruz suspects, obviously. But I'm hoping that all these little sort of breadcrumbs are starting to show up in other places as well.
Well, I think she kind of has to tell Rosa because she left her cleaning supplies in the bathroom, and Kirk wouldn't let her go back and get them. So she's going to have to tell Rosa, I didn't finish cleaning. All my stuff is there, and Mr. Cranston has forbidden me from going into his room.
Yeah.
So I think Rosa will know. And that was a pretty exciting episode for a Friday that was probably really a Thursday. So we might have a corker on Monday.
Yeah.
We had some credits again, all the usual people, and this time Haley's name is spelled differently. It was Haley in episode 391, and now it's Hayley. Haley. Also not, I don't think, the standard spelling, but I think that is how it will be spelled from now on. And in the non-regular cast section of the credits, we have Janice Harrison, Kathy Shower, Angel, Bernard White, and motel manager Steve Susskind. And that is it. We'll be back next week for week 82 of Santa Barbara. See you then.
Bye-bye.
So, I don't suppose you undress and whatnot in other people's studies all the time. This must be some sort of special occasion.